as soon as possible due to the high water and rising water levels in Cypress Creek and the possible failure of the stormwater pumps. The mandatory evacuation applies to streets north of Kingsbridge Road, including East and West, Greenbrook Drive, and Kinchester Drive. While the pump station is currently operational, it is struggling to lift against the high water level in Cypress Creek, which is above a 500-year event. If water levels continue to rise on the detention side inside the levee, it will get into the electrical system and shut down the pumps. For more information, please contact the Harris County Flood Control District at 713-684-4000. Residents should evacuate all family members and pets. In addition, they should take all medication and important papers such as insurance policies with them. For locations, the Inverness Forest Clubhouse at 12618 Greenbrook Drive and the Pine Multi-Purpose Building at 7500 FM 2920 are being used as shelters. Again, that is for the Inverness Forest subdivision. The second situation is on Spring Creek at the Northwood Pines subdivision of the Northgate Levee. The Northgate Crossing Municipality Utility District Number 1 has announced that due to worsening conditions of Spring Creek, a mandatory evacuation from the neighborhood is necessary. This includes the Northwood Pines subdivision. It is possible, if conditions continue at the current rate, that they may be unable to leave the subdivision after 11 p.m. Northwood Pines residents should prepare for immediate mandatory evacuation. Please exit the subdivision along I-45 South and proceed to Spring High School located at 19428 I-45 in Spring for shelter. To reach Spring High School, exit Cypress Wood Drive and turn left. The high school is located on the left. Please note that the mandatory evacuation is only for the Northwood Pines subdivision located in Northgate Crossing Mud Number 1. It is not intended for the Northgate subdivision located south of the Hardy Toll Road. All residents should evacuate all family members and pets, and in addition, they should take all medications and important papers such as insurance policies. So those are the two situations with mandatory evacuations in Harris County right now because of levee situations. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the Corps of Engineers to give an update on the operations of Addicks and Barker reservoirs.
Good evening. My name is Edmund Russo with the Army Corps of Engineers, Galveston District. This is a set of talking points on the Addicks and Barker Reservoir Dam System. This summary follows our last media report, which was made at 2 p.m. today. As of 5 p.m. today, the pool elevation at Addicks is 105 feet, which is up from 103.3 feet at 2 p.m. today. The pool elevation as of 5 p.m. today at Barker is 99.19 feet, which is up from 97.9 feet at 2 p.m. today. Both of these pools extend beyond government-owned reservoir land. These are both record highs above the April 2006 pool levels that were reached. Westheimer Parkway is inundated in Barker. Highway 6, Eldridge Parkway, and Clay Road in Addicks are inundated. To date, approximately 30 inches of rain has fallen in the watersheds upstream of Addicks and Barker. Estimates from the National Weather Service on rainfall above Addicks and Barker from today through the remainder of the tropical event is about 10 inches. This estimate is down from the previous estimate from yesterday of 25 inches. The Corps of Engineers started water releases from both Addicks and Barker today. The intent is to maintain the ability to control releases to the extent possible before uncontrolled releases would begin. Additionally, controlled releases reduce the magnitude and duration of uncontrolled releases, potentially decreasing the impacts of flooding. In the current event conditions, there's a potential for uncontrolled releases at the Addicks spillway. The spillway flows at Addicks would just begin at the low natural ground at the end of the spillway if the pool elevation reaches 108 feet. That elevation for Barker is 104 feet. We're getting closer to these points. At 2 p.m., we estimated that Addicks is discharging about 2,600 cubic feet per second, or CFS, and Barker about 2,100 CFS, for a combined total outflow of 4,700 CFS down Buffalo Bayou. We continue to raise the gates slowly at the structures in controlled incremental amounts. As of 5 p.m., these discharge rates are approximately 3,800 CFS and 3,500 CFS respectively, for the combined total of 7,300 CFS down Buffalo Bayou. The goal is to reach release rates of 4,000 CFS at both Addicks and Barker for a combined discharge down Buffalo Bayou of 8,000 CFS. We estimate, we estimate the dams will approach this target combined discharge rate tomorrow. No decisions have been made to increase planned discharge rates above this amount. Dam releases are expected to occur for several months following the storm event. Releases from Addicks and Barker constitute about 20% of the total flow of Buffalo Bayou, with the remaining 80% attributable to watershed runoff below the dams into the Bayou network. With the rainfall still occurring downstream in reaches of Buffalo Bayou and tributaries, as well as with the discharge of water from Addicks and Barker, the elevation of the bayou is holding fairly steady and may take several days to recede. The Corps of Engineers is rerunning models with the revised rain forecast to estimate the extent and timing of flooding below and above Addicks and Barker, beyond the extreme rain event flooding that has already occurred. We are also performing modeling to better understand when uncontrolled discharge might occur around the northern end of Addicks. In the scenario spillway overflow occurs, these flows have potential to be significant and could cause increased flooding potential, magnitude, and extent downstream. Based on the range of uncertainty of rainfall rates and totals, overflow of the northern Addicks spillway has potential to occur early in the hours tomorrow morning, August 29th, with flows migrating towards Buffalo Bayou along Beltway 8 corridor and crossing I-10. These flows have potential to affect the communities of Lakes on Eldridge, Independence Farms, and Tanner Heights. If spillway overflow occurs, approximately 5% of Buffalo Bayou would be from controlled release, 15% from uncontrolled release, and 80% from runoff in the watersheds below the dams. Properties upstream of Addicks and Barker are experiencing and expected to experience flooding starting today. Harris County Flood Control District will repeat the listing from the 2 p.m. update of neighborhoods located near the dams that have potential to flood, given the understanding of the current and future potential rainfall amounts. Public safety is our #1 concern as we work closely with our partners, the City of Houston, Fort Bend County, Harris County, and the Texas Department of Public Safety as we monitor the dams and reservoirs. Residents adjacent to the reservoirs, both upstream of Addicks and Barker and downstream along Buffalo Bayou, need to be vigilant because the water in the reservoirs is rising and could have additional flooding impacts. That concludes our briefing at this time, if there are any questions.
Dr. Russo, the decision to release and then the release rate, is that met what you hope? What has it done what you hoped it to do?
We are aiming to discharge 4,000 CFS, raising the gates gradually over today through tomorrow to try to get about 8,000 CFS down Buffalo Bayou. We so far are seeing that the bayou level is staying stable right now. We'll monitor the water levels as more rain falls today and through the next couple days, and we discharge through the outlet structures.
Does it basically come down to if the rainfall does increase, the rate increases, then the release rate will also have to do the same?
The release rate, yes. Well, what we would be looking for is a diminishment of rainfall over the next few days. If that does occur, that should have an effect on lowering of the water level in Buffalo Bayou, even with the discharge of 8,000 CFS into the bayou. Any other questions? If not, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go through a list of subdivisions. This is a comprehensive list. There's been some changes to some of the names from earlier this afternoon, and a few subdivisions have been added. Not necessarily because we expect the flooding to get worse, but because there's just a lot of subdivisions and we're trying to be as comprehensive as we can. I'm going to start with the Addicks Reservoir. These are the subdivisions on the western side of the pool that are expected to see flooding, and the flooding will vary in depth. The closer you are to the reservoir, the deeper the flooding will be. The further away from the reservoir, the shallower the flooding will be. And this includes both street flooding and potentially structure flooding. So Barker Addition, Barker Crossing, Barker's Ranch, Bear Creek Central, Bear Creek Estates, Bear Creek Farms, Bear Creek Trails, Bear Creek Village, Bear Creek West, Bradford Colony, Charlestown Colony, Clay Hill Park, Clay Hills Plaza, Clay Meadows, Concord Bridge, Concord Bridge North, Concord Colony, Cypress Park, Eldridge Park, Estates of Cullen Park, Fiest Park of Bear Creek Village, Forest Village, Georgetown Colony, Glencairn, Glencairn Park, Glencairn South, Hearthstone Place, Jamestown Colony, Lake Harbor, Lakes of Eldridge North, Lakes of Pine Forest, Lakes on Eldridge, Landing at Park Harbor, Langham Creek Colony, Maid Creek Farms, Park Harbor Estates, Park Harbor Oaks, Park Place Center, Pine Forest Green, Pine Forest Landing, and Pine Forest Village, Ranch at Barker Cypress, Savannah Estates, Timber Creek Place, Twin Lakes, villages at Lake Point, Westlake Forest, Westlake Place, and Yorktown Crossing. Again, those are the subdivisions along the western portion of Addicks. Also included in that is the subdivisions that would be impacted by the engagement of the north end of the Addicks spillway if that were to occur. The subdivisions in Barker Reservoir include Arcadia Court, Cinco Ranch Village, Estates of Baker Lane, Flagstone Estates, Green Trails Crossing, Green Trails Forest, Green Trails Oak, Green Trails Park, Green Trails Village, Heatherwood Park, Highland Trails, Kellywood Enclave, Kellywood Gardens, Kellywood and Nottingham Country, Kellywood Lakes, Kellywood Place, Kellywood Trails, Kingsland Acres, Kingsland Estates, Crystal Lake Estates, Lake Forest of Kellywood, Lakes of Buckingham Kellywood, Memorial Parkway Village, Nottingham Country, Oak Park Trails, Park Lake Village, Parkview at Barker Cypress, Ricefield Village, Stone Lodge, University Park West, Westside Forest, West Green Park, Willow Park Greens, Windsor Park Estates, and Windsor Park Lakes. And again, that is a list of the subdivisions along the western side of the Barker Reservoir pool. These lists have been provided to all of those of you here in the media that you can put on your websites. We encourage people to go there. I know that's a lot of subdivisions that I just named off. As Mr. Russo mentioned, the releases currently into Buffalo Bayou are not resulting in any rises at this time. The bayou has held fairly steady today, the downstream portion from the Addicks and Barker reservoirs all the way down to downtown Houston. We have seen some additional rain on the bayou, so that has prevented it from falling very much. As the releases increase to around the combined 8,000 over the next several hours, we expect that the bayou will either hold fairly steady or possibly rise only about a half a foot to a foot, and that would be on the upper end, the maximum. And so we are at this time not expecting significant additional flooding along the Buffalo Bayou due to the current controlled releases from the Addicks and Barker reservoirs. Obviously, with additional rainfall and with the runoff continuing, this is a changeable and fluid situation. The Corps of Engineers is running modeling at a continuous rate. We're working closely with the West Gulf River Forecast Center and the National Weather Service to make sure that we have the most accurate information to pass along to y'all, both on the reservoir pools, the releases, and what the impacts are going to be on Buffalo Bayou downstream. So with that, I'll take any questions.
You basically made that statement earlier today that that was your expectation that the release would not result in increased flooding, so that has in fact played out as you hoped.
Yes, right now we've been watching the bayou very carefully today, and there has not been really any increase at all in the water surface elevation. We have seen a very minor increase around Derry Ashford, but for the most part, the bayou is held steady. There's a combination of hydrologic factors that are at play right now. One is the water is still draining out from the very intense rainfall from Saturday night and Sunday. The second is releases have started at Barker and Addicks, and the third is we have gotten additional rainfall today. And so all of that is in balance in the watershed right now. And as the rain continues and the water continues to drain and the releases, they're all kind of balancing each other out. If one of those changes, for example, if the rain stops, that would stop adding additional water to the bayou. And so that's why we're fairly comfortable saying that even though the releases may be increased up to 8,000 or will be increased up to 8,000, we're not probably going to see that much of an increase in the elevation of the bayou.
Do you have a rough estimate of how many homes have been affected so far?
Right now, we do not have an estimate. Since we're up to 105 feet, we certainly know that the lowest homes in Addicks and the lowest homes in Barker are likely flooding. They likely have water. Right now, I would estimate probably around 100 or so, possibly 200. But the potential to affect significantly larger numbers are there if we realize a pool elevation around 108.
We had asked you, Judge Evans, this earlier about the downtown tunnels. Are you aware of flooding down there? And if not, are there current risks that could happen?
I am not aware of any flooding in the downtown tunnels. Let me be clear that Buffalo Bayou in the downtown area was much higher on Saturday night and Sunday. So flooding may have already occurred in some areas of downtown Houston. From the bayou, we know flooding occurred, but as far as some of these other areas, and we would not expect the releases out of Addicks and Barker to reach the current releases out of Addicks and Barker to reach the levels that the bayou got to Saturday night and Sunday in downtown Houston.
How would you categorize like the rain over the last 12 hours in terms of what you were expecting, how it's fallen, and obviously how it's affected everything?
So the rainfall over the last 24 hours has not been as bad as the last 12 hours has not been as bad as it was Saturday night and Sunday. That is when we had just incredible amounts of rain. Unfortunately, this rainfall falling on top of what has already fallen on Saturday and Sunday continues to produce situations across our area. And even if we were dealing with one of these situations, this would be a big day. The fact that we are dealing with multiple potential levee overtoppings, we're dealing with the Addicks and Barker situation, and then widespread major direct flooding on several of our watersheds is unprecedented in the city. And really it's unprecedented in this region of what we're going through. So as far as the rainfall goes, it has been one of the biggest rainfall events we've ever experienced. And our infrastructure is certainly being tested to its limits.
These are mandatory evacuations. What's your message to people who decide to stay? Because there's always going to be some sticklers out there.
Yeah, so the question was, what is the message for the folks in the mandatory evacuation areas? This would be in the Inverness Forest and Northgate Levee and the Northwood Pines subdivisions. You need to be prepared for the levee to be overtopped. Obviously, there's a lot of water against these levees. There's a lot of pressure against these levees. And when you put this much water and pressure against levees, things can sometimes go wrong. At this point, nothing is indicating that there is any integrity issues to the levees, but experience tells us from other places that when you put this much water against them, things can happen. And the water is going to be against these levees for an extended period of time. And so I would certainly encourage those of you in those mandatory evacuation areas to take this seriously. If the levee is overtopped or potentially breached, the water is going to rise very rapidly and it is going to get very deep. And so I would encourage you to follow these evacuation orders that your particular subdivisions have instated and heed those warnings. Anything else? All right, we will plan to do another update on the Addicks and Barker situation and anything else sometime tomorrow morning, probably be early in the morning, and we'll go from there.
Can I ask you one more question? Are you aware of anything going on with the releases around Lake Livingston?
I am not aware of anything going on with releases at Lake Livingston. They are releasing water, but Lake Livingston water does not come to Harris County. That goes into the Trinity River, which affects Liberty County and areas to our east. There are releases going on Lake Conroe, which do go into the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. We are expecting major to record flooding on the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. We will rival the October 1994 flood. But I want to be clear that the majority of the water that is moving down the West Fork of the San Jacinto River is from Spring and Cypress Creeks and Lake Creek, and it is only a very small fraction of Lake Conroe release getting to the West Fork at Humble. So the flooding on the West Fork of the river and potentially the flooding around Lake Houston, the majority of the water is not coming from Lake Conroe. And had Lake Conroe not been in place and been able to hold back some of this water, the flooding would be much, much worse on the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. All right, guys, we will see you again tomorrow morning.